So, after 7 years of waiting for the sequel and 8 months of me just putting off this game on my part, and then 6 recordings later, I finally can give my opinion on is The Last of Us Part 2 worth buying, or should you just skip it as a whole? And let's just get right into this. Before I even start getting into why I think this game is good or why I think this game is bad, I want to make one thing clear. This game is enjoyable, okay? Now that I made that clear, let's get into why I think this game is good. The game sounds amazing and it feels amazing. It's just incredible how far Naughty Dogs has come, especially when you compare the sound, the feel, the audio of the first game to this game. It's like a whole different world has been created. Every environment feels unique and feels special. When you arrive in Seattle and it's all like gray and green and it's amazing. And then when you eventually reach the part of Seattle where it's all flooded, it feels like, oh shit, I'm actually in a flooded city, not like other games where it's just kind of like, oh, that's just some water. This game is beautiful by every means of the word, and especially audio-wise, it's amazing. When an enemy is on your left, if you have headsets on, you'll hear him on your left. If he's on your right, you'll hear him on your right. And it's clear, and when you shoot a gun, it sounds like you're shooting a gun. When you shoot a shotgun, it sounds like you're shooting a shotgun, not like you're just shooting some random-ass gun. It's amazing, and the animations, oh my god, it's some of the smoothest animations that I've ever seen on a console before. It's so smooth. When you go to the workbench and you upgrade your guns, you see Ellie and eventually Abby unload the magazines and unbolt the rifles, and it's amazing. It's so smooth. And don't even get me started on how amazing the rope animations are. Oh my god, the rope is amazing. The rope is a god. And it sucks so bad. It sucks so bad that these animators, you know for a fact, they spent hours upon hours making the faces look great, making the models of the guns look realistic and feel good and sound great, just to follow a story that fell flat. And that's really where we're going to get into it. Ellie and Abby are great characters at their core. Even though it's really hard for you to like Abby, she's still a very great character and enjoyable to play as, but it just falls flat when it comes to the storyline. At no point in the game do I actually care about a side character because you're just not given that much time to care about them. And then when you finally feel a small sort of, oh my god, I can see why Ellie cares about her, oh my god, I can see why Abby's starting to open up with them, they just kind of get sidelined from the story, except with Lev. Lev is amazing. Lev is the first instance in the game where I actually care about a side character, and it's great. But then, even with Lev, he kind of gets thrown to the side because he decides to run off. So, even at that moment, it's kind of like, really? Naughty Dog, this is what you want to do? And that's the biggest issue with this game, in my opinion. The story is bearable. It's not as bad as people claim it to be, especially how I just made it out to be. At its core, just like with the characters, it's a good story, especially with the murder of Joel. And a lot of people might disagree with me, but I think they handled Joel's death about average. I don't think they handled it poorly, but I definitely do think they could have done it a little bit better. In my opinion, it had to be something as traumatic and as drastic like that to get a real response out of Ellie. Think about it like this. Ellie, for the first time in her life, has settled down and has created friends and bonds and relationships with people. If it isn't something as traumatic as literally seeing Joel die in front of her, why would she leave that? Why would she uproot her life and her safety from the colony to go somewhere entirely different into enemy territory to go after someone? And don't get me wrong, I think that killing Joel that early, especially when we only had 30 minutes to really get to meet Abby, was terrible. They handled that poorly. But the way that they showed us the scene where Joel died was masterful. and it was beautiful. And as sad and traumatic as it was, really was the correct oomph that you needed to have an emotional response so drastic enough that you're literally willing to leave a colony where you're protected in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Now, the biggest drawback from this story, other than its pacing and its lack of allowing us to care for side characters, is its decision to about halfway through the story, or not even halfway, about the last 4 hours of the story, turn from a, listen, this is a revenge story on Ellie's part, and Abby's story is basically just getting you caught up on what Ellie's doing to her friends, to, hey, this is now a story about violence not being the answer. And on paper, that sounds amazing, right? Especially if they would have just stuck with that throughout the whole entire game and made that the primary focus. But at no point in the game, except when she murders someone at the hospital during a cutscene, do you actually see Ellie feel bad about the actions she's taken. There were multiple times where they could have introduced a part where Dana says something like, "Are you okay? How are you feeling?" after like a big murder scene where you just killed 13 wolf members. That would have really incited this reaction from you, where it's like Ellie's actually starting to take a very emotional toll on murdering all these people instead of these random ass characters who you literally met for like 10 minutes while they were murdering Joel. And it could have been done so good. It could have been done masterfully. It's not like this game didn't create cutscenes where you actually got emotional, because there were. Meeting Abby's father, even though at that point I didn't necessarily care for her, was still a pretty emotional scene to see. That he, even though we met him in the first game and he was kind of the surgeon that was going to kill Ellie, he still cared about people. He still took time out of his day to save a zebra and to teach Abby new techniques about tracking and stuff like that, and how they had an actual emotional connection. And that was great to see, especially when you see Ellie and Joel spending time together, especially on the museum cutscene. That made me tear up, seeing them together, spending time together, acting like a father and daughter duo that we all knew and loved them for. And it sucks because it would have been way better if this game didn't have any of those moments and just been straight up bland like it was. But when you give us this cream of the crop storytelling like you did in certain sections, and then for the rest of the game have us deal with mediocre storytelling, it's just a slap in the face. And it really shows us that Naughty Dog sadly spent about 80% of their budget on making the game look good, and then just kind of said, hey, we have $5 and a Big Mac, good luck writing the story. And don't get me wrong, that 80% of the game really looked amazing, but when you find yourself only paying attention in major cutscenes because the game looks good and because you're planning on reviewing the game, not because you're interested in what's actually going on, that's a big problem, especially in games like this. If this game was like a Borderlands type game where the storyline didn't really matter and it was just kind of there to as a filler, it would be totally fine. But in a game like this where the story is super important, having a bland / just bearable story isn't worth it. And for that reason, and for the pacing reason, I have to give this game a 6 out of 10. And on my scale, a 6 out of 10 is above average. A 5 out of 10 is average. I know a lot of people like to say 7's average. That's not how I grade these games. The first Last of Us was easily a 10 out of 10. And it kind of just is sad that this game wasn't better than I expected it to be. And don't get me wrong, it's not like they didn't try, because they did. But when you try making us care about a character that turns out to be really important for the story, 13 hours into the game, after she's already murdered the main protagonist of the first game, it's a really hard thing to do. And it sucks that they missed the mark, because if they would have nailed that on the head, this would have easily been one of the greatest games of all time. And I think we all deep down understand that if we would have all at the end of the game cared about Abby, cared about Lev, cared about Dana, cared about Ellie all on around the same amount, this game would have left us speechless. And at the end, we would have felt whole. We would have felt, okay, maybe they'll run in again later down the line. And I really do hope they make a third game, because there is a lot up on the table right now. Will Ellie and Dana and JJ ever get back together? Will we see more of Abby, or is she kind of just gone forever? It's an amazing story that could come out of this, but just the game itself was a pretty trash story. And listen, if somehow someone at Naughty Dog sees this, I forgive you. And I really just want you guys to make this series right and to fix the errors that you did. This game isn't a straight up hot pile of garbage, but it's not the Mona Lisa that the first Last of Us was. In the wise words of the amazing Nakey Jakey, in the first game I became Joel. In the DLC I became Ellie. And in The Last of Us Part 2 I became disappointed. And that's really what it comes down to. I'm not mad at the game. I'm not mad at the writers. I'm not mad at the devs. I'm disappointed in them because I know the masterpiece that they can create, and I know that they know how to do it, especially throughout this game, and I really just want to see the next one succeed. So if you guys are watching this and you hear this message, I'm going to give you guys a clean slate, and I love you all immensely. Just please bring Joel back. I'm kidding. Keep him dead. Don't do some bullshit where you bring him back. Just make the story more interesting next time. I love you all. If you like this video, leave a comment down below. Naughty Dog, if you like this video, I would appreciate a like from you guys. Actually, no, hit me with a sub. That'd be nice. Anyway, I'm done doing this video. I'm done recording myself. I've somehow recorded myself 6 times making the same review video. I'm out. If you like this video, leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed it, tell me what I did wrong. Tell me what I did bad. Leave a like, hit a sub. I don't know. I'm out. Love you all. Mwah.